The air hangs heavy with the scent of churned earth and distant cordite, a muddy cocktail that clings to every boot and breath. It's the tail end of winter's bite, but spring whispers promises in the greening hedgerows, promises that feel like lies under the gray sky. The Rhine River, that ancient serpent of stone and steel, lies just miles behind, its banks scarred by the thunder of Operation Plunder. 2 weeks ago, the 21st Army Group hurled itself across in a storm of engineers and artillery, and now the push eastward devours the Rhineland like a slow, inexorable tide. American GIs of the 9th Armored Division trudge along a rutted farm lane, their olive-drab fatigues caked in the black loam of the Eifel Hills. Jeeps growl ahead, kicking up sprays of mud that splatter windshields like accusations. The war here isn't the blitz of Normandy beaches or the hedgerow hell of the Bocage. It's a creeping exhaustion, a slog through villages ghosted by civilians and laced with the ghosts of Wehrmacht rearguards. Shell craters pock the fields like the poxmarks some mechanical plague, and the horizon hums with the low drone of C-47s ferrying supplies from the Remagen bridgehead. Captain Elias Thorne, 38, ordnance officer with the wiry build of a man who spent more hours under hoods than in foxholes, rides shotgun in a lid jeep. His face is a map of quiet calculation, crow's feet etched from squinting at blueprints, a faint scar along his jaw from a 41 training mishap with a faulty carburetor. He's no frontline brawler. Thorne's war is won with micrometers and manifests, dissecting the enemy's iron guts to fortify his own. Beside him, Sergeant Jake Miller, 29, a Detroit auto worker turned track jockey, hunches over the wheel, his grease-blackened knuckles white on the rim. Miller's the kind of mechanic who talks to engines like lovers, coaxing life from the dying with a wrench and a curse. Trailing in a rumbling M3 half-track are the rest of the detail. Private Tommy Lewis, 19, fresh from a Brooklyn shipyard, scribbling feverishly in a dog-eared notebook, and Lieutenant Dan Harris, 32, logistics whiz with a ledger always at hand, his spectacles fogged against the chill. They're a supply scout platoon tasked with scavenging fuel dumps and vehicle wrecks to keep the division's arteries flowing. Bullets are cheap. Gasoline is the real currency now. The jeep crests a low rise and the world shifts. Below, in a shallow valley cradled by skeletal oaks, sprawls a German motor pool, abandoned like a child's forgotten toy fort. Rows of vehicles gleam dully in the weak light, Opel Blitz trucks with flat tires, Kubelwagen jeeps nosed into ditches, and dominating the scene, a phalanx of Sd.Kfz 7 heavy tractors. 11 of them lined up like silent sentinels, their half-track hulls broad and purposeful, canvas tilts flapping lazily in the breeze. No smoke scars, no shrapnel bites. These are pristine, as if the crews simply stepped away for coffee and never came back. Thorne leans forward, his breath fogging the glass. "Hold up, Sergeant. What in God's name is that?" Miller kills the engine, the sudden silence amplifying the drip of melting snow from the trees. The platoon dismounts, boots squelching into the muck. Lewis, notebook in hand, lets out a low whistle. "Holy Mother of Christ, Captain. That's no junkyard. Looks like Kraut Central casting for the apocalypse." The Sd.Kfz 7 stand tall, 8 tons of articulated steel and ambition, their Maybach engines hooded like slumbering predators. Each one's a marvel of Teutonic precision. Interleaved road wheels for that legendary smooth ride over rutted terrain, a sloped glycis plate that shrugs off small arms fire like rain on slate, and a rear-mounted winch that could haul a 105mm howitzer out of a bog without breaking stride. The half-track's rubber-banded treads, still taut and unfrayed, gleam with a thin film of oil, as if oiled by ghosts. German engineering at its zenith, overbuilt, overthought, over everything. Thorne approaches the nearest one, a Model 7-1 variant with faint stenciling for an 88mm flak battery. He runs a gloved hand along the fender, feeling the cold bite of stamped steel. Precision like this, it's poetry in metal. No wonder they rolled over Poland like it was a rug. The hull's rivets are flawless, aligned with the obsessiveness of a watchmaker. Inside the open cab, the instrument panel beckons, gauges in crisp black and white, levers machined to a whisper. A faint scent of aged lubricant wafts up, mingled with the metallic tang of neglect. "Look at this beast," Miller mutters, vaulting into the driver's seat with the ease of a man born to it. His fingers dance over the controls, tracing the synchromesh gearbox, 5 speeds forward, 1 reverse, a ZF transmission that shifts like butter. Maybach HL62 tuck under the hood. 6 cylinders, water-cooled, 140 horses at 2,600 RPM. Purrs like a Studebaker on Sunday, but with teeth. He peers into the engine bay, flashlight beam cutting the gloom. Clean as a whistle, not a drop of mud in the block. These boys babied him. Harris joins him, ledger flipping open. Sd.Kfz 7, Zugkraftwagen 8-ton, prime mover for everything from Pack 40s to Nebelwerfers. Wehrmacht built over 12,000. Reliable as hell in the mud of the Eastern Front, better than our old M2s in snow. His voice carries the clipped efficiency of a man who sees wars as spreadsheets. But abandoned, in this condition, means they didn't run out of parts, they ran out of something else. Louis, ever the romantic, climbs aboard another, his youthful face alight with boyish awe. It's like driving a Panzersarge. Feel that suspension, leaf springs and torsion bars, eats the bumps like they're nothing. He mimics revving an invisible throttle, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Ma, if you could see me now. You're Tommy, riding a tank that eats mountains for breakfast. Wish you could send this home, better than any postcard. The platoon fans out, poking through the ghosts of occupation. A discarded Feldwebel's cap in the cab, a half-eaten iron ration tin glinting in the footwell. No bodies, no blood, just absence. The valley feels hollowed out, the war's retreat etched in tire tracks veering wildly toward the east. Thorne stands back, arms crossed, his mind already dissecting. They left these, in the path of the 7th Army? Desperation or design? Captain, Miller calls from the lead vehicle, his head buried in the fuel compartment. Tanks are bone dry, not a sniff left, but look here, auxiliary cans, all labeled benzene. They drained 'em deliberate-like, planned bug-out. Thorne nods, his eyes narrowing. The Rhineland's a graveyard of such mysteries. Tiger tanks bogged in bogs for want of tracks, Me-109s rusting on airstrips with empty wing tanks. But these Sd.Kfz, they're the artery of the Wehrmacht's punch, towing the big guns that turned Stalingrad into rubble, the flak that shredded B-17s over the Ruhr. To leave them idled is to sever a limb. All right, listen up, Thorne says, his voice steady as a torque wrench. The men gather, mud flaking from their putties. We're not leaving these for the next division to scrap. Intel says Jerry's fuel lines are thinner than a whore's promise. Bombers hit the synthetic plants at Luna last month, and the Romania fields are ours now. But these machines, they could teach us something. About them, about us. Miller grins, wiping grime on his sleeve. You mean hotwire a kraut ride? Hell, Cap, I'm in. Been dreaming of bench testing one since Kasserine. Harris adjusts his spectacles, pencil tapping. Sir, regs say capture and tag for transport, but if we're testing, I'd need metrics, load weights, terrain profiles, compared to the M3 here, our workhorse. White 160 AX, 147 horses, sips Gassica lady at tea. Louis pockets his notebook, eyes wide. Test 'em? Like a drag race with Nazis? Thorne allows a rare half-smile, the kind that creases his scar. Not a race, Private, a reckoning. Radio back to battalion, request 5 drums of 80 octane. We're refueling these sons of bitches. Sergeant Miller, you're on point. Pick the 3 cleanest. Lieutenant, chart the route. 5 miles recon loop, mixed road and track. Private Lewis, document everything. Photos, notes, the works. The order ripples out like a thrown stone in still water. Within the hour, a supply truck rumbles up from the rear, its bed groaning under red jerry cans stamped with Allied stars. The air fills with the sharp, acrid bite of gasoline, that universal perfume of mechanized war, poured into the Sd.Kfz 7's 215-liter tanks through makeshift funnels fashioned from ammo crates. Miller works with ritualistic care, priming the Maybach's carburetor, checking the spark plugs for carbon fouling. Easy now, girl, he murmurs to the engine, as if soothing a skittish mare. We've all been left high and dry once. The first crank, a low cough, then a building rumble. The Maybach awakens not with a roar, but a symphony. A deep, resonant purr that vibrates through the hull like the heartbeat of some iron leviathan. Exhaust belches blue smoke, sweet with unburnt fuel, carrying the faint, oily aroma of high-octane precision. The platoon steps back, hats doffed instinctively, as the half-track lurches forward on command. Treads bite the mud with a satisfying crunch, the interleaved wheels flexing like living sinew. Jesus, listen to that, Louis breathes, his notebook forgotten. Smooth as silk, No wonder they called it the devil's backbone. Feels invincible. Miller guns it gently, tracing a figure 8 around the pool. The Sd.Kfz responds with eager grace, acceleration crisp, turning radius tight despite the 8-ton bulk. No hesitation, no slop in the steering. This is what they built empires on, Thorne thinks, watching the beast prowl. Power without apology. The kind of machine that makes a man believe in manifest destiny or master race nonsense. Harris jots furiously. Top speed governed at 50 km/h, 31 miles per hour. Torque delivery linear, no lag. Suspension absorbs undulations like their complements. He glances at their M3, parked humbly beside, its white engine idling with a more pedestrian growl. Ours is tough, but this is art. The sun breaches the clouds, gilding the valley in pale gold. For a moment, the war recedes. These GIs aren't conquerors, but archaeologists unearthing a lost civilization's crown jewels. Laughter bubbles up, nervous and genuine, as Miller executes a mock charge on a haystack, the half-track devouring the obstacle with predatory ease. "Load her up, boys," Thorne calls, climbing aboard the second vehicle. "Simulate a tow, lash that dummy pack barrel from the opal to the hitch. Full combat weight. Let's see if she hauls like she hunts." As the engines sink in a throaty chorus, the convoy forms. 3 Sd.Kfz in the van, the M3 trailing like a skeptical chaperone. They roll out, treads churning the lane into a slurry, the rumble echoing off the hills like distant thunder. Curiosity fuels them now, that wide-eyed wonder of boys handed the keys to forbidden rides. The German machines glide over potholes, their precision a balm against the chaos of the front. Engineering perfection, Thorne reflects, wind whipping his collar. The Reich's secret weapon, build it better, and the world bends. Hours tick by in a haze of motion. 5 miles become 10, the loop extending as admiration swells. Gauges flicker, temps steady, oils pure. No smoke, no stutter. The Maybachs sing their aria of dominance. Then, in the cab of the Leeds Kfz, Miller's brow furrows. He taps the fuel indicator, a simple needle on a porcelain dial. It twitches lower than it should, dipping toward the red with unnatural haste. Cap? Something ain't right. We topped off at 215 liters. Should be good for 250 clicks easy, but this, she's thirstier than a nun in a speakeasy. Thorne leans over from the passenger seat, his analytical calm cracking just a hair. The needle confirms it. A third gone in under 2 hours of mixed cruising. Impossible. Specs say 80 liters per 100, efficient for a hauler. But the glass doesn't lie. They thought they'd found German brilliance until they checked the fuel. The convoy snakes through the Rhineland's fractured mosaic, paved Reichsstraßen crumbling into farm tracks, their edges fringed with barbed wire like the remnants of some rusted neural net. The Sd.Kfz lead the dance, their treads a rhythmic percussion against the earth. Thrum, 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 a cadence that syncs with the quickening pulse of the men aboard. Sunlight filters through the canopy of budding linden trees, dappling the hulls in shifting patterns of golden shadow, turning these captured relics into something almost mythical. The air is alive with motion, the whoosh of wind through canvas flaps, the faint hiss of air filters gulping Rhineland dust, and beneath it all, the unyielding song of the Maybach engines, smooth, insistent, a baritone hymn to mechanical supremacy. Sergeant Miller rides high in the lead Sd.Kfz, his cap pushed back, a cigarette dangling unlit from his lips as if the sheer thrill suffices for smoke. The half-track devours the undulating terrain with effortless poise. Where the lane dips into a rain-scoured gully, the interleaved wheels, those 8 per side nested like armored petals, compress and rebound without a jolt. The leaf spring suspension, translating the jolt into mere suggestion. "Goddamn poetry," Miller mutters, his voice half lost to the wind. He feathers the throttle, and the Maybach responds with a surge of torque that pins him to the seat. The ZF gearbox slipping through ratios like a dancer's glissade. 140 horses, and not one bucking bronco in the herd. Krauts didn't build this. They summoned it. Behind him in the troop compartment, Private Lewis bounces on a bench seat, padded with salvaged straw, his notebook splayed across his knees like a talisman. He's sketching feverishly. Quick lines capturing the glacis plate's subtle angle, the winch drum's coiled menace, the way the exhaust stack vents heat in lazy curls. "Sarge, this thing's got more guts than a whole platoon of deuce-and-a-halves. Tau's 8 tons loaded, and it feels like pushing a wheelbarrow." His words tumble out, laced with the wide-eyed fervor of youth-handed fire. Ma, you'd laugh. Me, your little shipfitter, king of the half-tracks. But this is what gods drive. Captain Thorne rides shotgun in the second Sd.Kfz, his field glasses trained on the horizon where church spires poke through the mist like accusing fingers. The vehicle's cab is a cocoon of ergonomic intent. Adjustable seats bolted firm against the frame, a dashboard arrayed with idiot-proof gauges, tachometer sweeping smoothly to 2200 RPM, oil pressure steady at 4 bar. No vibrations mar the precision. Even the steering wheel, leather-wrapped and weighted just so, turns with the feedback of a surgeon's scalpel. Thorne's mind races ahead, cataloging fuel injection via Bosch pumps atomizes better than our Stromberg's, less waste, compression ratio 7:1, tuned for the long haul. If Jerry's leaving these, it's not sloth, it's starvation. He glances at the fuel gauge, a porcelain-faced sentinel amid the dials. The needle hovers at 3/4, untroubled. For now. Lieutenant Harris trails in the M3 half-track, their American stalwart, a boxy utilitarian brute with a white 160AX V8 growling at idle like a chained mastiff. The M3's no slouch, 147 horsepower, armored against 50 caliber spite, and a fuel thirst that's been the butt of every quartermaster's joke since Sicily. But beside these German thoroughbreds, it plods, its simpler suspension juddering over roots, the troop bay rattling with the loose camaraderie of GIs who've learned to love its flaws. Harris hunches over his ledger in the cab, stopwatch in one hand, pencil in the other. Mark, 0930 hours, distance 12 kilometers, terrain 60% macadam, 40% aggregate. Load, simulated 105mm howitzer barrel, 2,500 pounds. His voice crackles over the field radio, linking the convoy in a web of data. Admiration's fine for parades, but war's won on paper. Let's see if the specs hold water, or gas. The route loops them through a ghost village, Call perhaps, or one of its kin, its cobblestones upheaved by long-gone barrages, windows gaping like empty sockets. The SKS-7s prowl the streets with predatory grace, their broad tracks negotiating the debris without a hitch, the half-track rears pivoting on a dime thanks to that clever differential lock. Miller whoops as he powers through a flooded ford, water sluicing up in crystalline sheets that sparkle in the sun. Eat your heart out, Jeep. This baby's amphibious in a puddle. The engine's rumble deepens under load, pulling the dummy tow with inertial ease, the Maybach's inline-6 breathing deep and even. Its water-cooled block shrugging off the thermal spike like a boxer taking a jab. Lewis leans out, snapping photos with a borrowed Argus camera. Click whir, capturing the moment. Treads churning ochre mud into froth, the canvas tilt billowing like a victory banner. Captain, you gotta feel this. It's not drivin', it's commandin', like the whole world's yieldin'. His laughter rings clear, boyish, and unbound, cutting through the exhaust's blue haze that carries a faint, almost sweet undertone of high-octane burn. Synthetic benzene, the Reich's alchemical gift from coal and desperation. Thorne allows himself a nod, the corner of his mouth twitching upward. There's the myth made manifest. German engineering as Weltanschauung. Overbuild the frame, over-engineer the soul, and lesser men falter. But as they crest a rise overlooking a fallow vineyard, vines twisted like the fingers of the drowned, the fuel gauge in his cab catches his eye again. It dips, not dramatically, but insistently. From 3/4 to just shy of half in the span of an hour's varied run. He taps the glass as if suspicion alone could steady it. Anomaly? Or the first whisper of truth? Specs from captured manuals peg consumption at 80 to 100 liters per 100 kilometers under tow. We're averaging 90 km/h bursts. Should be fine. Yet the needle mocks him, sliding southward like Mercury in a fever dream. Radio check, Lieutenant. Thorne teased the handset, his tone level as machined tolerances. Fuel status on your bird? Harris's reply crackles back, laced with the M3's engine whine. Full tank, sir. 220 liters start, down maybe a fifth. Steady sip. Your leads? Lead vehicle signaling, concern. Thorne eyes Miller ahead, who waves a thumbs down with exaggerated flair. Sergeant reports accelerated draw, possible gauge fault, but let's not chalk it to gremlins yet. The convoy halts at a crossroads, where a shattered signpost points mockingly toward Köln, 15 kilometers, the city a smoldering question mark on the map. The men dismount, stretching kinks from spines, passing around canteens of brackish water that tastes of canvas and chlorine. Miller pops the Sd.Kfz's hood, the Maybach's block still ticking with residual heat, radiating warmth like a forge's dying embers. He dips a stick into the tank, plink, and emerges with a sheen that speaks volumes. Amber liquid, scant inches from the bottom. Cap, we started with 215 liters fresh. That's, hell, near 80 liters gone in 25 clicks. She's guzzling like a submariner on shore leave. Lewis crowds in, peering with the mix of awe and unease that marks a boy's first brush with adult disillusion. But she runs like a dream, Sarge. No knock, no miss. What's eating it? Everything, Miller grunts, wiping his hands on a rag that was once khaki. Big displacement, 5.3 liters, high compression for torque. And these tracks, rubber blocks add drag on road. Off 'em, she's a hog in silk pajamas. He slams the hood, the clang echoing like a verdict. Beautiful, yeah, but beauty starves if it don't pace itself. Thorne circles the vehicle, his boot nudging a discarded jerry can, empty, its spout crusted with residue. The scent hits him then, gasoline, sharp and cloying, permeating the air like an unspoken confession. Not the efficient burn of a well-tuned mill, but waste, unseen vapors perhaps, from over-rich mixtures, tuned for peak power over prudence. Admiration's blinding. We've been ogling the sculpture, forgetting the pedestal's cracked. He turns to Harris, who's already extrapolating in his ledger. Scribbles of consumption curves, arrows linking Reich fuel audits from captured docks. Lieutenant, your thoughts? Harris pushes up his spectacles, the lenses catching the light like twin prisms. Sir, if this holds, 1 Sd.Kfz per battery, towing 88s across France, a Panzer Division's logistics train would bleed dry in weeks. Our M3s, white engines, carbureted but frugal, do 150 kilometers on the same load. Jerry's genius is gluttonous. Thorne absorbs it, the pieces slotting like gears in a differential. The war's underbelly, not just the roar of 88s at Anzio or the blitz through the Ardennes, but the silent killer, the endless convoys of tankers snaking from Ploiești, only to wither under RAF spits. They built for gods, not men. For the thrust of victory, blind to the drag of endurance. Mount up, he orders, voice threading steel through the confusion. We're doubling down. Side by side from here. 1 Kraut beast, 1 Yank hound. Same route extension. 10 miles out, same load, same pace. Log every drop. If it's a fluke, we laugh it off. If not. He trails off, climbing back aboard, the Maybach coughing to life beneath him. A tiger's yawn, magnificent and menacing. The engines blend in discord, the Sd.Kfz's refined baritone overlaying the M3's coarser bark, two philosophies in mechanical duet. They lunge forward, Miller gunning the German lead with controlled zeal, Harris pacing it in the M3 like a metronome. The road unspools, a macadam vein through beech woods, flanked by the skeletal hulks of burned-out Hanemags, their own fuel tanks long since siphoned by desperate locals. Kilometers bleed away, 5, 7. The gauges tell divergent tales. In the M3, Harris notes a leisurely quarter-mark descent, the white V8 sipping with blue-collar thrift. But in this KF7, Miller's eyes flick to the dash every 100 yards, the needle carving a steeper arc, half gone then perilously low. Cap, she's parched, another 5K and we're pushing. Thorne grips the radio. Hold formation. We're learning here, Sergeant, not racing. But what? That brilliance devours its own brilliance. At the 10-mile mark, a derelict barn looming like a squatter's throne, the convoy idles. Miller cuts his engine first. It dies with a reluctant sigh, the silence heavy as judgment. He checks the dipstick, fumes and regret. Harris's M3 purrs on, gauge mocking at 3/8. Numbers incoming, sir, Harris reports, his voice a scalpel. Sd.Kfz, 180 liters consumed for 25 kilometers total. M3, 55 liters, ratio near 3:1 under tow. Thorne stares at the idled behemoth, its hood ticking cool, the valley's breeze carrying the faint accusatory whiff of evaporated empire. Not a fault, a feature, designed for dominance, damned by demand. The numbers didn't lie, the German machine was eating itself alive. The sun claws higher, bleaching the valley into stark relief. Shadows sharp as bayonets, the air shimmering with the heat mirage of idling engines. At the derelict barn, a sagging timber skeleton festooned with ivy like gangrenous veins, the convoy clusters like conspirators. The Sd.Kfz squats low, its Maybach silent now, the hood's faint tick a metronome of cooling regret. Empty jerry cans litter the ground like spent casings, their red flanks mocking the thirst they've slaked. The scent lingers, gasoline's volatile ghost, sweet and insidious, mingling with the earthy rot of moldering hay bales and the faint, acrid bite of overheated brakes. Captain Thorne stands amid the tableau, arms folded across his field jacket, the weight of command settling like dew on his shoulders. His eyes, steel gray unblinking, trace the half-track's lines. The broad fenders flared like a predator's haunches, the exhaust stack still exhaling wisps of blue that curl upward in lazy defiance. We've romanced the myth long enough, time to autopsy the beast. The numbers from Harris's ledger burn in his mind. 180 liters vanished into ether for a mere 25 kilometers. Not a glitch, but a gospel. The Maybach's voracious maw tuned for blitzkrieg bursts, not the marathon of empire. Sergeant Miller, Thorne says, his voice a low drawl that cuts the murmur of the men. Top her off. One more drum, make it 50 liters, precise. We're running the gauntlet proper now. Miller nods, all business, his earlier grin etched away by the grease-streaked furrow in his brow. He hefts the can with a grunt, the glug-glug of transfer echoing like a libation to indifferent gods. The fuel sloshes into the tank's maw, the gauge needle twitching upward in feeble reprieve. That's 50 on the nose, Cap. Enough for a sprint, maybe. But if she's still sucking like a hoover, he trails off, slamming the filler cap with a finality that rings like a gavel. Private Lewis hovers nearby, his notebook transformed into a ledger of its own, pages crammed with hasty glyphs. Fuel curves sketched in pencil lead, annotations like engine hum, resonant, 1/800 RPM cruise, and tread grip, superior no-slip on fiend % grade. His youthful zeal has tempered into something keener, a mix of scribbler's curiosity and the dawning unease of a witness. This test, it's like judging a prizefighter by his bar tab, ain't it? All that punch, but can he go the distance? Lieutenant Harris, ever the quant, spreads a crumpled map across the M3's hood, its creases like the war's own topography. He marks the route with a grease pencil. A 20-kilometer oval looping back through the woods, half macadam scar from Luftwaffe convoys, half rutted farm drag laced with shell-sunk ponds. Parameters locked, sir. Identical loads, 2,500 pounds dummy ordnance lashed to each hitch. Pace, convoy cruise, 30 kph average. Terrain profile, 40% incline cumulative. Start fuel M3 at full 220 liters. Sd.Kfz at 50 measured. Checkpoints every 5 clicks, dip and log. The men move with the clipped efficiency of ritual. The dummy pack barrel, scavenged iron from the motor pool, wrapped in sacking to mimic howitzer heft, is winched onto the Sd.Kfz's tow bar first, the half-track's rear dipping under the strain before the suspension. Those horseman-type units, resilient as coiled serpents, rebounds with a hydraulic sigh. Miller tests the hitch, revving in neutral. The Maybach snarls to life, torque flooding the drivetrain in a seamless wave that yanks the load taut without a quiver. Power like God's own right hook, Miller thinks, feeling the vibration hum through his palms. But God's got a tab running too. The M3 follows suit, its white V8 coughing awake with a more democratic rumble, less symphony, more factory shift. Harris lashes the barrel with sisal rope, the half-track simpler bogey wheels, creaking in protest but holding firm. No poetry here, just pragmatism. The M3's 13-ton frame built for the assembly line of war, not the showroom of supremacy. Its fuel tank gurgles full, the gauge a straightforward arc from E to F, unadorned by the Sd.Kfz's Baroque flourishes. Positions, Thorne commands, mounting the Sd.Kfz-7's cab beside Miller. The door, hinged with stamped steel precision, thunks shut, sealing them in a world of Bakelite switches and leather grips. Lewis piles into the rear bay, wedged among ammo crates for ballast, his camera slung like a sidearm. Harris takes the M3's wheel solo, radio handset clipped to his collar for real-time relay. The air thickens with anticipation. The sweet choke of fresh fuel, the metallic tang of oiled chains, the undercurrent of sweat from men who know this isn't play anymore. Go, Thorne says into the ether, and the beasts lunge. The route unfurls like a challenge. First, the macadam stretch, arrow straight and cratered, where the Sd.Kfz asserts its lineage. Miller holds 35 kph easy, the Maybach purring at 2,000 RPM, the interleaved wheels devouring imperfections with oiled indifference. The tow load trails steady, the half-track's 130mm ground clearance scoffing at ruts that would snag a lesser rig. Wind lashes Thorne's face, carrying the exhaust's blue banner, a richer plume now under tow, laced with the faint, caramelized whiff of over-enriched combustion. Tuned for the kill, not the crawl. Every cylinder stroke a declaration. We conquer, we consume. Checkpoint 1, 5 kilometers. Harris's voice crackles over the radio, steady as a heartbeat. M3, 8 liters down. Temp nominal, no strain. The American machine plods on, its V8 sipping with the thrift of a Depression-era farmer, the gauge a gentle slope toward half. Miller taps his own dial, 12 liters gone. Thirsty still but holden, she's pulling like she owns the road. Lewis shouts from the back, notebook flapping. Vibration nil. Feels like a Cadillac on rails. Laughter spikes through the cab. Brittle but real, a bulwark against the creeping doubt. The terrain turns treacherous at the 5-click mark. The farm drag, a morass of mud churned by March rains and abandoned wagons, flanked by hedgerows thick with bramble barbs. Here, the Sd.Kfz shines. Its half-tracks engage with a seamless shift, rubber pads gripping the slurry where wheeled rigs would spin futile. Miller downshifts to third, the ZF box whispering through gates, torque peaking at 360 nm to haul the load uphill without a bog. The engine song deepens, a throaty growl that resonates in the chest, drowning the suck of treads and chocolate earth. This is why they crossed the Meuse in 40. Raw, unyielding force. But the gauge, it plummets. At 10 kilometers, Miller's voice tightens over the link. 20 liters burned, cap. Half the tank. She's hauling ass, but it's costing her soul. Thorne leans forward, peering at the porcelain face. The needle arcs past a quarter, flirting with empty like a gambler chasing flush. Not inefficiency, insatiability. The Maybach's 5.3-liter sweep guzzles for glory, injection system flooding chambers for that instant response, vapors lost to the wind. Harris checks in, his tone a counterpoint of calm. M3, 16 liters total draw, load stable, tracks shedding mud fine. The American half-track churns steady, its simpler carburetor metering fuel with Yankee parsimony. No excess, no waste. The exhaust is cleaner, leaner, a faint haze that dissipates quick, leaving only the musk of wet soil. The loop's apex looms, a 15% grade snaking through beech woods, roots like exposed tendons, puddles mirroring the overcast sky. Miller guns it, the Sd.Kfz 7 surging with predatory zeal, the suspension compressing under the toe's inertia, rebounding to propel them upward in bounds. Leaves whirl in the prop wash, the air filling with the sharp crackle of branches snapping under treads. Lewis whoops, we're eating this hill alive. But his cheer falters as he glimpses Miller's white-knuckled grip. At 15 kilometers, the radio spits urgency. Sd.Kfz warning light, fuel low, 8 liters slosh, pushing vapor lock territory. The Maybach stutters, a brief hiccup in the idle like a throat catching on phlegm before Miller feathers the throttle, coaxing it back. The scent shifts, richer now, unburnt fuel weeping from the stack, a cloying perfume that coats the tongue. Abort and coast, Thorne orders, his calm fracturing into command steel. Downshift, nurse her. Lieutenant, shadow and prep tow cable. The descent is a dirge. This Kf7 coasts the backstretch, momentum bleeding into the flat, the engine idling at a parched whisper. At 18 kilometers, 2/3 through, the Maybach gasps, coughs, and dies. A final wheeze like a marathoner collapsing at the tape, and silence crashes in. The half-track rolls to a halt on a crown of gravel, the tow load thudding to rest behind. Miller twists the key, nothing but a futile click, the starter whining against vacuum. Empty, he confirms, voice hollow. He dips the stick, dry as bone. 50 liters, 18 kilometers. The math mocks them. 278 liters per 100 kilometers under duress. A glutton's feast where the M3's 72 liters per 100 would suffice. Harris's M3 rumbles up, engine purring mockery, its gauge mocking at 3/4 full, 44 liters sipped for the full 20-click haul. He dismounts, ledger in hand, spectacles glinting like verdict lenses. Confirmed, sir. M3 returns with 176 liters reserve, 0. Extrapolate to division scale, a flak battery's tractors alone would drain 500 tons monthly. Unsustainable from Barbarossa's jump. The crew gathers around the stranded behemoth, boots crunching gravel, faces shadowed by the irony. Lewis kneels by the tank, tracing the seam where promise met poverty. We came for the roar, found the rattle. Miller kicks a tread idly, the rubber yielding silent. Built like a battleship to tow a rowboat. Genius, or just blind hubris? Thorne stares eastward, where the Rhine's distant gleam taunts like spilled fuel. Captured manifests flood his mind, Wehrmacht logs from the bulge, Panzerlehr's ghosts, divisions halted not by Shermans but by tankers idled in snow for want of benzol. The Eastern Front's maw, the Atlantic's wolf packs, they weren't the noose. This was engines idled by their own excess, panzers parked in precision while GIs marched on fumes and ingenuity. It's the flaw in the forge, Thorne says finally, his words measured as a blueprint. They chased perfection, overbuilt frames, peak output mills, without asking the cost. Power for the parade, not the persistence. Our M3, she's no thoroughbred, but she'll cross the Elbe while this beauty rusts. Harris nods, closing his ledger with a snap. Logistics isn't glamour, sir. It's the artery. Sever it, and the heart starves. Bombs or no. Lewis scribbles the epiphany, his pencil leads snapping under pressure. The wind rises, carrying the faint echo of distant artillery, a reminder that wars end not in blaze, but in whimper. The Sd.Kfz 7 looms, magnificent in defeat, its silence a sermon on overreach. Power is meaningless if it starves itself to death. The stranded Stefet 7 broods on the gravel crown like a felled titan, its interleaved wheels caked in the indifferent mud, the Maybach's silence a vacuum that sucks the life from the air. Shadows lengthen across the rutted drag, the sun dipping toward the Eifel ridges in a smear of ochre and bruised purple. The M3's white engine idles nearby, a steadfast mutter against the encroaching quiet, its exhaust a thin veil of gray that dissipates without drama. The scent clings, evaporated gasoline, sharp as regret, undercut by the damp rot of leaf mold and the faint, coppery tang of distant shell bursts, artillery duels probing the Siegfried line like fingers in the dark. Captain Thorne kneels by the half-track's flank, gloved fingers tracing the fuel line's seam where rubber meets steel, as if touch alone could divine the Empire's autopsy. The experiment's verdict hangs heavy. 50 liters for 18 kilometers, a pyre of efficiency's funeral. Not a single machine's sin. The blueprint of collapse. He rises, dusting his knees, and surveys the crew, faces etched with the shift from awe to awakening, like boys glimpsing the strings on their puppet heroes. Lieutenant Harris, Thorne says, voice low and deliberate, cable her to the M3. We're towing back, but eyes open on the way. Scout the verges. This isn't isolated. Harris nods, coiling the hemp hawser with practiced loops, his spectacles catching the slanting light. Aye, sir, if one's emblematic. He doesn't finish. The math does it for him, ledger tucked under arm like a prophet's scroll. Sergeant Miller slings his wrench kit over a shoulder, the clank of tools a dirge. Patterns there if you squint, Cap. Seen it in the Ardennes, panzers ditched with full rounds, bone-dry tanks. Thought it was sabotage. Now, just math catching up. Private Lewis, camera dangling from his neck like a millstone, snaps a final frame. The Sd.Kfz in defeat, hull agleam but impotent, the tow load slumped like a surrendered standard. His notebook bears the scars, pages curled from frantic jotting, margins crammed with extrapolations. Div fuel wreck 1,000 tons per day, actual 600, deficit equals doom. Ma, this war's not bullets, it's bottles, empty ones, littering the road to nowhere. The M3 takes the strain easy, Harris winching the cable taut with a hydraulic whine that pierces the hush. The Sd.Kfz 7 lurches forward in tow, treads dragging furrows like the tracks of a retreating ghost. The convoy creeps eastward at a funeral pace, 15 km per hour, the American half-track's V8 murmuring thrift, while the dead weight whispers indictment. Verbiage unspool, hedgerows bloated with spring's false hope, their thorns snagging at canvas like accusations. First sighting, a kilometer out, nosed into a drainage ditch, a lone Sd.Kfz 251 half-track, its shirts and skirts dangling like tattered skirts, engine bay yawning empty. No fire scars, no penetrations, just the dull gleam of abandonment. Miller leans from the cab, spitting tobacco juice. Another one. Hanamag stablemate, bet the Maybach's as parched as ours. Thorne signals halt. They dismount, boots sinking into the verge's sop. The 251's cab holds relics, a Feldpost envelope ink blurred by rain, a half-smoked ersatz cigarette in the ashtray, its paper furred with mold. Harris pops the fuel cap, dry as August dust. Same story, 80-liter tank, not a drop. Crew scarpered on foot, I'd wager. Eastern Front vets, new and to cut losses. Lewis circles, lens devouring details. The rubber block treads worn but intact, the MG mount stripped bare. Like a horse shot for a limp it never had. powerful enough to haul a platoon through snow, but starved before the fight. They press on, the pattern crystallizing like frost on glass. 2 clicks further, a cluster of 3 Opel Blitz trucks, 3-tonners with canvas bows sagging under dew, clustered like stalled pilgrims on a lay-by. Engines cold, hoods ajar, carburetors gummed, but tanks siphoned clean. One bears a faded Wehrmacht eagle on the door, stenciled Kraft, Apt 7th Pazits, Panzer Division fuelers, the very veins of the Blitz. Thorne peers inside, manifests fluttering like trapped moths, columns of figures in Gothic script, Benzin, 200 Hell geliefert, verbraucht, 180 Olschel, delivered scant, consumed voracious. Logistics bleed, Harris murmurs, ledger blooming anew. These blitzes guzzle 50 liters per 100 kilometers unloaded. Loaded? Double. A panzer group's train, hundreds of them, would lap the Reich dry in a month. The revelation spreads like ink in water. By the 5th kilometer, the road's a gallery of ghosts. A Kubelwagen Jeep belly up in a crater, its 1.8-liter flat-4 silent, tank cap pried open by looters or desperation. Then the crown, a pair of Panzer IV Osvo H mediums, hulking sentinels half off the berm, turrets traversed rear as if in futile watch. Their Maybach HL 120s, 12-cylinder behemoths, 300 horses of overbuilt fury, loom under open hoods, cooling fins black with unburnt residue. Ausfahrer's caps litter the command tank's turret basket alongside a scrawled note in pencil, Kein Kraftstoff, nach Osten zu Fuß. No fuel, east on foot. Miller vaults the glacis, boots thudding on sloped armor. Ausf 8 late model, KWK 40 long barrel, could punch a Sherman at 2,000 yards. But look here. He gestures to the fuel ports. Main 470 liters, reserve 120, both vented dry, the rubber lines shriveled like veins post-exsanguination. The air reeks of it, stale petrol, mingled with the oily reek of neglected lubricants congealing in sumps. Thorne climbs aboard the command panzer, the commander's seat still indented with phantom weight. Periscopes stare blind, the radio's vacuum tubes stare colder. They idled here, engines ticking down, while we rolled on recycled crankcase oil. Captured intel floods back, OKB dispatches from the bulge, Panzerkorps 5, 60% operational, Kraftstoffmangel. Fuel shortage, the polite term for strangulation. Harris joins him, flashlight beam probing the gloom. Sir, cross-reference, Ardennes offensive, Deck 44. 5th Panzer Army burned 1,200 tons in 48 hours, advance of 50 kilometers. Refuel? 1 convoy half sunk by Jabos. By New Year's, they were ghosts. Lewis from the loader's hatch captures the tableau. Panzers in repose, tracks chewed but unbroken, the 75mm breach yawning empty. It's everywhere, Cap, not wrecked, wrung out. Like the whole damn Wehrmacht's a bonfire built on matchsticks. The convoy halts again at a crossroads shrine, a roadside crucifix splintered by near-miss shrapnel, petals from a votive wreath browning in the dirt. Dusk gathers, painting the wrecks in lengthening shades, a Nebelwerfer rack on a stranded Sd.Kfz 10, its 6 barrels tilted skyward like accusing fingers. A flak 88 limbered to nothing, this. 7 variants winch cable frayed from futile pulls. Each a vignette of depletion, pristine where it counts, sights zeroed, bores oiled, but immobilized by absence. Thorne gathers the men by the M3's tailgate, the half-track's engine cut to amplify the encroaching night chorus. Crickets rasping, a far-off dog barking defiance. What we're seeing isn't defeat by steel, it's defeat by subtraction. Jerry's war machine, forged for thunder, tuned for sprint. Maybachs that outpull our Fords, suspensions that mock the mud, but all chained to a thirst that outran their wells. Miller nods, lighting a lucky strike, the flare etching his face in orange. Blitzkrieg's the killer, Cap, fast as lightning, till the storm clouds empty. Eastern Front? 3,000 kilometers on legs of gas. They gambled the pot, lost the tankers. Harris flips his ledger, voice gaining edge. Confirmed by our logs, sir. Schaef estimates, Reich produced 7 million tons synthetic fuel, 44, Allied bombers halved it. Imports, Ploiești gone by 44, Baku a dream. Wehrmacht norm 1,500 tons day. Actual, 800. Deficit snowballs, divisions halt, not hit. Lewis exhales, notebook clutched like confession. So the tanks we cracked at Remagen? Not brave stands, just stopped. Engines cold, crews marching, war won on empty roads. Thorne's gaze drifts to the horizon, where pinpricks of muzzle flash stitch the dark, the Third Army grinding toward Kassel. Bullets break bodies, logistics breaks will. The pattern's everywhere now, not scars of battle, but signatures of surrender. Abandoned tractors littering every byway, their Sd.Kfz, frames rusting in ranks, trucks with manifests mocking their miles, panzers posed like statues to hubris. The Reich's roar, that Maybach symphony that shook the steppe and Seine, fading not to allied thunder but to the tick of cooling iron. A wind rises, moaning through the wrecks, carrying the chill bite of the Moselle. Thorne mounts the M3, the crew following suit. Radio battalion, report pattern. Captured ordnance advisory, prioritize fuel audits on all Kraut salvage. This is the key, gentlemen. Not the guns we face, but the ghosts we tow. The engine coughs alive, the Kfz-7 trundling behind like a chained witness. They roll into twilight, the road a ribbon of revelation. Every shadow a stalled Kfz, every glint a dry tank. The GI's chatter dies, replaced by the M3's steady thrum, a requiem for overreach. Logistics officers would confirm it later, in musty briefings over captured charts. The Reich lost not by destruction, but depletion. Divisions dissolved not under fire, but famine. The war's true front, pipelines cracked, not ramparts breached. The roar of German engines had become the sound of their undoing. The Chesapeake Bay laps at gravel shores under a sky bruised with thunderheads, the air thick with the brine of salt marsh and the faint, acrid promise of rain. Aberdeen Proving Ground sprawls like a colossus of concrete and clay, 72,000 acres of scarred earth where the Ordnance Department's alchemists dissect the spoils of war. Test tracks carve the landscape, straightaways of oiled macadams stretching to the horizon, mud pits engineered for torment, skid pans slick with deliberate malice. Hangars loom like stern matrons, their corrugated skins rattling in the gusts, housing the cadavers of conflict. V1 buzz bombs with wings clipped, 88mm KWKs racked on stands like trophies of a hunt unfinished. It's peacetime now, or the ghost of it. VE Day's ink barely dry on the wires, but the world turns on its axis of after-action. Crates stamped captured enemy equipment clutter the rail sidings, disgorged from Liberty ships that rode the Atlantic's corpse-flecked swells. Among them, 3 Sd.Kfz heavy tractors, shipped stateside from that Rhineland motor pool, their hulls lashed under tarps that flap like surrender flags. The Maybach engines, once tigers in the Ardennes, now mute witnesses crated like museum pieces. Fluorescent tubes buzz overhead, casting a sterile pallor on workbenches scarred by calipers and torque wrenches. The air hums with the low susurrus of fans pulling fumes from ether solvents, undercut by the metallic clink of tools and the occasional hiss of pneumatic lifts. Captain Elias Thorne, promoted to major now, his scar a badge polished by promotion, stands at a drafting table, blueprints unfurled like the flayed skin of strategy. His uniform hangs looser, the Rhineland's mud scoured away, but the furrows in his brow remain, deepened by months of manifests and memos. Beside him, a cadre of engineers, Dr. Albert Kessler, 52, bespectacled savant from MIT's wartime pipeline, his bow tie askew as always. Sergeant Jake Miller, mustered out but lingering on contract, his civvies a rumpled flannel that can't hide the grease monkey's soul, and a gaggle of techs in coveralls, clipboards at ready like shields. Lieutenant Dan Harris, now captain, logistics liaison, paces the periphery, his ledger evolved into a stack of tabbed reports, each a chapter in the war's unwritten epilogue. Private Tommy Lewis, honorably discharged with a Purple Heart from a stray splinter at the Rhine, haunts the edges as a civilian photographer, his Argus upgraded to a speed graphic, capturing the autopsy for posterity. The Sd.Kfz, designation Yankee 1, dominates the bay on a hydraulic cradle, its underbelly splayed like a vivisected frog. Techs swarm it. One peels back the fuel lines with a snick of shears, another borescope probes the Maybach cylinders, screens flickering with ghostly internals. The scent assaults. Aged petroleum, crystallized in reservoirs, the sharp bite of machining oil, and beneath, the faint char of a combustion never fully quenched. "All right, gentlemen," Thorne says, tapping the blueprint's fuel schematic, a labyrinth of Bosch injectors and baffled tanks. Rhineland field test was anecdote. Today we make doctrine. Full teardown, consumption curves under load, thermal mapping, efficiency audit against the M3 baseline. Kessler adjusts his spectacles, peering at a preliminary graph pinned to the board. Jagged lines of the Sd.Kfz's thirst, 278 liters per 100 kilometers in mud tow, plotted against the M3's sedate 72. Fascinating pathology, Major. The HL6222 inline 6 overhead valves, compression at 7.1 for that torque spike. Masterful for short sprints, Barbarossa's Thunder Run. But observe the injection. Constant pressure, no economizer valve. Floods the chambers rich, even at cruise. Vapors vent unburnt, up to 15% loss. Miller, elbow deep in the transmission tunnel, grunts agreement, his voice echoing from the guts. Like I told you in the mud, Doc, she's a hot rod, not a hauler. ZF box shifts silk, but that drag from the interleaved wheels? On road, it's like hauling a trailer of regrets. Rubber blocks chew energy, heat builds, fuel boils off. A tech pipes up from the engine cradle, grease monkey young, flashlight beam dancing on the block's fins. Confirmed, sir. Cooling systems over capacity. Water pump spins 2,500 liters an hour. Fine for overheated steps, but wasteful. Radiator baffles trap heat inefficiently. We clocked 10 degrees over the M3 under identical load. Harris flips a report, his voice the dry crackle of revelation codified. Scale it up. 1 Panzer Division, 200 heavies like this towing flak and pack. Daily burn, 500 tons. Wehrmacht peak 41? 2,000 tons total output by 44, synthetics at 40 cent, bombers at Schweinfurt, Ploieschti raids, deficit compounds 30% operational drop by Normandy, 60% at the Bulge. Not attrition, arithmetic. Lewis circles with his Graflex, the bellows wheezing as he frames shots, the Maybach's head lifted like a surgeon's prize, pistons gleaming in array, fuel injectors dissected on velvet, nozzles clogged with the residue of desperation. Back home, mods say it's the sin of pride. Build a palace, forget the pantry. His flash pops, etching the scene in magnesium white, immortalizing the irony. German steel, forged for eternity, felled by fractions. Thorne nods, tracing the dynamometer schematics. Runner on the dyno first. Simulated tow, 2,500 pounds inertial, 30 kph loop. Measure volumetric efficiency, air-fuel ratio across RPM bands. The Proving Ground awakens to torment. Yankee 1 prowls the straightaway, tethered to a load bank that simulates the drag of absent howitzers, its treads keening on asphalt laid fresh for the Inquisition. Miller's at the wheel again, civvy shirt sleeves rolled, face set in the concentration of a confessor. The Maybach roars, that familiar baritone, undiminished by ocean crossing, throttle pinned, the hull shuddering as torque floods the prop shaft. Exhaust belches blue, richer now under scrutiny, the wind shearing it into tendrils that sting the eyes with unspent promise. Kessler monitors from a chase jeep, oscilloscope waveforms jittering on a portable rig, lambda sensors pegging the mix at 12.1, lean for economy, but the Maybach demands 421 peak, guzzling to compensate. See the curve drop at 2,000 RPM? Partial throttle and it leans out, backfires under load. No variable timing, it's all or nothing. The run clocks 10 miles. Fuel draw metered at 45 liters, the auxiliary tank's glass float bobbing empty. Techs swarm post-run, pyrometers probing the manifold, glowing 650 Celsius, hotspots blooming where baffles failed to diffuse. Thermal inefficiency, 1 logs, 5% energy loss to exhaust. M3 baseline, 8%. Harris cross-checks against a parallel M3 run, the American half-track lapping the track with workmanlike growl, its white V8 nursing 14 liters for the same torture. Graphs overlay on the lab projector later. Sd.Kfz line a precipice. M3's a gentle incline. Endurance encoded, Harris narrates to the assembled brass, colonels from Detroit Arsenal, blueprints in hand. Yank design, modular under-stressed, 100,000-mile overhaul standard. Kraut, 50,000 peak, then cascade failure. Perfection's price, parts scarcity, skilled labor drain. Rain lashes the windows now, a staccato requiem drumming on tin roofs. The room's a cocoon of pipe smoke and slide carousels, maps of the Reich pinned like flayed hides, red arrows tracing fuel pipelines from the Ruhr to the Caucasus, choked nodes at Leuna and Zeitz. Thorne stands at the podium, his slides clicking through the testament, Rhineland photos by Lewis, gleaming wrecks in verdant betrayal, dyno readouts spiking like fever charts, extrapolated models projecting Wehrmacht's dry heave by 45. Gentlemen, Thorne begins, pointer wrapping the final graph, a bar chart of division mobility. U.S. First Army at 85% fueled through the Rhine, 5th Panzer at 22% by the Moselle. We didn't outgun them, we outlasted them. Their Sd.Kfz 7, 8 tons of articulated artistry towing 105s through the mud of Kursk. But its appetite, 215-liter tank for 150 kilometers range, mirrored the Reich's soul, ravenous, unrestrained. Synthetics from coal, 80-octane laced with toluene, miracle fuel for miracle machines, until the factories burned. Kessler interjects, pipe stem gesturing. Philosophic flaw 2. Porsche and Henschel chased the ideal form, overlapped wheels for ride, but 16 hours to swap a track. Our Christie suspension? Field fix in 30 minutes. Elegance versus expedition. Miller, slouched in the back, chimes in with a mechanic's gravel. Drove both, sirs. Kraut purrs like a violin till the bow snaps. Ours, truck engine in a track body, rattles but rolls. War's a hall, not a waltz. The brass murmurs assent, pencils scratching memos. Adopt frugality and T-34 derivatives. Prioritize 80-octane logistics for 46 prototypes. Harris distributes the final report. Fuel is force multiplier. Lessons from the Zugkraftwagen. Its cover stamped with the Eagle and Wrench ordnance seal. Lewis, camera idle for once, sketches in the margins. Sd.Kfz 7 fading into silhouette, and M3 forging ahead, fuel cans trailing like faithful hounds. Twilight bleeds the sky to indigo, the rain a silver veil blurring the stacks of surplus. Shermans in mothballs, half-tracks queued for demob. Yankee 1, test scars fresh, gauges recalibrated, injectors retrofitted with economizers per Aberdeen's tweak, sits on blocks destined for the boneyard. Thorne approaches alone, Miller trailing with a 5-gallon can, sloshing like unspoken elegy. Fire her up one last time? Miller asks, key in hand. Thorne nods. The Maybach stirs, cough, rumble, roar, a final area echoing off the hulks. It idles smooth, the modified mix leaner now, blue smoke thin to gray. They let it purr for minutes, the vibration abridged to that Rhineland valley. Curiosities spark, admirations blaze, experiments chill, revelations wait. Think they knew? Miller muses, killing the engine. Silence falls, profound as the bay's tide. Engineers in Stuttgart, Porsche's boys, chasing the V2 dream, forgetting the gas pump. Thorne stares at the dash, the fuel gauge steady at full. A lie rectified. They worshipped perfection. Form dictating function, the machine is Übermensch. We, endurance. The M3 wasn't pretty, but she crossed the Rhine on recycled sump. War's not the sprint they dreamed, it's the slog we endured. The rain intensifies, drumming on the hull like fading applause. Lewis's photos, developed in the darkroom, capture this. The Sd.Kfz, in American dusk, mighty but marooned, a monument to what burns too bright. The Reich's engines were mighty, but they burned too bright to last. In war, efficiency isn't elegance, it's survival. The screen lingers on black, the moral etching like frost. The Reich didn't just run out of luck, it ran out of fuel. Power without efficiency is the slowest form of defeat. Sometimes the loudest lesson is taught by an empty tank. If you believe that victory depends not on power, but on persistence, subscribe for more untold World War II revelations.